If you are lost when it comes to makeup brushes and you need a makeup brush 101, I'm a makeup artist. I do it professionally for weddings and photography makeup, and I'm going to give you the whole rundown today, okay? All of the 101. So I have foundation on my skin right now. We're going to get into it, and we're going to get in depth as possible. Now, first things first, when it comes to makeup brushes, it's like your own rules. Like, you get to choose what you want to do. I don't know if that makes sense, but like I have a 32-piece brush set right here that I got here off of this place, and they're so good. We're gonna use all of them today. That way I have an affordable, easy option for you guys to attain. If you like any of these, they're $12 for 32 pieces, and we're not even gonna use all of them, and that's just insane. So this is a kabuki or stippling brush, and this is really good to blend out foundation, but there are a lot of ways you can blend out foundation if it's a thicker formula. This is a very loose brush, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's soft, and you want a more firmer, dense, compacted brush if you have like a thicker formulation, because it's going to move the product easier. Does that make sense? I don't know. So I'm gonna go in with this brush and just kind of swirl the foundation around. It's gonna cover up our dark marks and just look really nice and blended. And if you feel like you struggle with foundation brushes specifically and it looking splotchy, a foolproof way to make sure that it doesn't is just to go over it lightly with a damp sponge and make sure it picks up any additional product that might be creasing, and like you're good to go. You know what I'm saying? It is a great hack. I like to use both personally. I'm definitely a both girl, but if you're just one or the other, like, that's fine. You guys know the super viral concealer brush that's happening right now? Like, I know you know what I'm talking about. I can't say it. This is so similar. Like, paying $12 when that brush is about 3 times the price just to get 31 other brushes besides this is worth it. So this has that exact same shape. To just get right up in the under eye and blend this out just using tapping motions, because it fits really, really nicely right there, and because it's a smaller brush, you have more precision. Now, if you've seen all the videos talking about the shape of this brush for concealer and why it's good because it fits in those places. It's not too stiff, so you're not gonna get like demarcation on the product, but it's not too fluffy to where it's just leaving like little lines in your concealer because it's not moving it out. You wanna use like a medium firm pressure, and you're gonna get just like a flawlessly blended under eye. Okay, now we're gonna talk about contour. This is a very thin formula. This is the Sheer Bronze by Iconic London. And whenever I'm using a thicker cream like the LA Girl Pro Conceal to bronze, or a thicker like cream bronzer versus a liquid bronzer, this is more of a liquid bronzer. The cream bronzer, you wanna use like a stiff, flat brush. This being stiff makes it have, how do I word this? It just has more strength to move that product around, versus something that's kind of domed has a little bit more give, a little bit softer, not as firm of a brush, so you can blend that out. So I'm just gonna push this into the skin with tapping motion so I don't disrupt the product underneath. And by doing this, I'm gonna get that really, really nice blend and glow with this brush. And I like using this shape because it gets right in there, and you can also just come right down the sides of the nose, and it fits the side of the forehead really nicely as well. Okay, when it comes to blush, I have my cream blush applied. What I like to use is a more rounded, domed brush, because the roundness of this really allows us to get the curvature of the cheek, because that's where your cheekbones are, and so it's not a flat or concaved surface. The dome shape really allows the blend to, I don't know how to, it's really, really hard to explain, but again, there are no rules with brushes, and definitely experiment with what brush works best for you, but this is my preferred method. It's like a domed brush like this, or even a Real Techniques flat brush, because I can really blend it out. So you can use either, it just kind of depends on the product. If I have like a product that's a little bit thinner than this, it's easier to move, I might use this because it's softer and fluffier. The firmer your brush is, the easier it is to move a more stiff, thick product, but the dome shape of this just helps to concentrate the product in the center where we applied it. The temperature of this brush allows the denseness of the product and the opacity of the product to stay where we mostly applied it, but kind of sheer out on the edges. When it comes to powder, personally, I like to use a powder puff. If you use a brush on the rest of your face, if you have dry skin, you're gonna get a much sheerer wash of powder. But when it comes to my under eye, I really wanna make sure that everything is set and goes from literally being a cream that's wet and tacky to a dry set down powder. And by pushing it in with a little powder puff, I know that I'm getting the most control. I'm sorry, I'm dog sitting and they're still introducing each other. Hey, be nice. So I'm gonna use this powder puff, the Makeup the Makeup Revolution translucent powder, and I'm gonna really push this into my under eye. Now, powder bronzer, when we go in with a powder bronzer, you're going to want either a brush that's super firm and dense to just pack that powder on. So if I used something like this, it's flat and really, really dense and firm, and I can just tap that on and it's gonna give me opacity. The fluffier brush that is softer is going to give me a more lighter wash of color. And that's what I want since I'm layering products today, but it is all about preference. And so I'm going to load this brush up and then I'm gonna tap it off, because then I know the brush is fully coated in the product, but there isn't too much on it, so it's evenly distributed through the brush. And then I will just tap this where I want the bronzer to be. Now at this point, if you've set the whole face with powder, you can gently wipe, and the powder is going to kind of mix in with the other powders, so you're not really going to disrupt the product underneath. You're just going to get like a really nice angelic blend with that powder. Does that make sense? It's almost like a mixing medium. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm trying to make as much sense for you guys as possible. Now this is the brush I used for bronzer. This is the brush I'm going to use for blush. It has that nice tapered softness, and that's what I want for my blush on my cheeks. Now I don't have any blush on this brush yet, but you can see that it just hits. I'm using the Luminoso blush from Milani. So again, just really packing that on there and then dabbing it off, so I know that it's evenly coated, so I'm not accidentally going to get like a splotch somewhere. And so this is going to help set that blush down so it's not a wet powder, but the brush just kind of fans everything out. Like it looks more blended on this side than this side, and it's because the edges of this brush being tapered just allows it to almost blend itself. So if you find the right brush to blend your product, you notice that it will be easier to work with your product. Really when it comes to makeup brushes and like the product that you're using, again, there's 32 brushes in this thing, and I think I use like 6 or 7 maybe. Of course, when it comes to the eyes and makeup brushes, I could do like a whole series on that if you want, but it's very in-depth and it kind of is trial and error and figuring out what works best for you, if that makes sense, especially because we all have different shapes to our eyes and sizes to our creases, all of the things. This is really good to apply, 1, a face mask, 2, a face moisturizer. It's not necessary. 3, you could also apply your foundation if you're not trying to get it on your hands. This just lays the product on the skin. It doesn't blend it out. The Kabuki brush is good if you have a smaller, for the foundation that we blended out. If you have a smaller one, it can be really good for a cream bronzer, but this is too big, so that's why we used it for foundation. A fan brush is a really, really good for a nose or a cheek highlight, but it also can be really good for a nose contour because it's super thin, but it's too thin to like use it for your face. I have like this flat top Kabuki brush that's a little bit stiffer. This would be better for a thicker foundation to blend that, because like the Kabuki brush, it is soft and flat, but it's a little bit more firm, so you're gonna have more control over that thicker product. So just keep in mind that if the product's thicker, you want the brush to be more dense, and if the product is thinner or easier to maneuver like powders, you want it to be more fluffy and move easier and flow easier, so you get a really nice blend. But experiment with your brushes and find what works best for you, because there really is a lot of ways you can use makeup brushes. But let me know if you have any questions.